Today, we are going to talk about the vocabulary for our statistics and probability unit, and we will also try out using some of that vocabulary. So, to start, we've got the word experiment. Experiment is a word that you have likely heard before, and as you know, it's an investigation or procedure that gets results, and these results within an experiment should vary, they should be different. Outcomes are what we call those results from your experiment. You do your experiment, you obtain results. Those results are called outcomes. As we mentioned, those results should vary, and when we have a group of those, so one or more results or outcomes, that would be called an event. Lastly, we have favorable outcomes, and those are the outcomes of one specific event that we are looking at. So if we look here, we can talk about possible outcomes and favorable outcomes. So we have this number cube here, like a die. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on each of its respective sides. So if we ask what are the possible outcomes, well, the possible outcomes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Those are all the options that we have for outcomes if we were to roll that die. Then it asks us what the favorable outcomes. So remember, favorable outcomes are the outcomes specific, like a specific outcome that we're looking for. So what are the favorable outcomes of rolling an even number? So we can go ahead and say, well, option number 1 is 1. That's not even. 2 is even. 3 is not. 4 is. 5 is not. 6 is. So you would state in response to this question, what are the favorable outcomes of rolling an even number? You would say the favorable outcomes of the event are rolling a 2, 4, and 6. Those are the results we want for this specific event. And then it asks, what are the favorable outcomes of rolling a number greater than 5? So again, you can make your table greater than 5. That's our favorable outcome. And then this not greater than 5 is not. So we go through our list again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all not greater than 5. The only favorable outcome in this situation would be 6. So you would respond by saying the favorable outcome of the event is rolling a 6. So this is what are the outcomes and the favorable outcomes. So this is like a list of what the outcomes are. If we go to the next slide, we will talk about counting our outcomes. So this is different. This is asking for a number, whereas on the last slide, we were talking about specific outcomes. So when we count them, so it says we spin the spinner. How many possible outcomes are there? Well, if we look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 sections. The spinner could land on any one of those 6, making the answer. How many possible outcomes are there? Well, there are 6 possible outcomes. Then it asks us, then, how many ways can spinning red occur? Well, we've got red 1, 2, 3 times. 3 sections of red results in that option, that outcome, potentially happening in 3 different ways. We could spin and land on this red, we could spin and land on this red, or we've got this red. It asks us, how many ways can spinning not purple occur? How many ways can spinning not purple occur? Well, there are 5 sections that are not purple, meaning that there are 5 ways that spinning not purple can occur. But the second part of the question goes back to the previous slide. What are the favorable outcomes of spinning not purple? And as you can see here in this table, purple is your favorable outcome, right? So, and then not purple is not favorable. Notice here that we list everything still. So we go through the spinner. Purple is favorable, so we put in our purple column. Then we've got red. Red is not favorable. Blue is not favorable. Red is not favorable. Green is not favorable, and red is not favorable. Notice in our table that we do list red a total of 3 times because there are 3 different options to spin red. So we do need to list all 3 of those because they are their own separate sections on your spinner. So you would say that the favorable outcomes of the event are red, 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 green, and blue. All right, so let's give it a try here. It says we've got these marbles here. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about marbles today. We've got this collection of marbles. So the very first thing that we want to know, if we choose a marble at random, what are the possible outcomes? Here you simply list, okay, so what do I have? The possible outcomes are green, red, yellow, purple, blue, yellow, blue, and yellow. So all of these are their own separate result, right? Pulling this yellow marble is different than pulling this yellow marble. So I do list yellow 3 times because they are all separate possible outcomes. Then it asks us how many outcomes. Notice the slight difference in these questions. What are the possible outcomes? How many possible outcomes? Well, now here is where we just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 marbles. So there are 8 possible outcomes. All right. So again, the difference in the question, what are they? We make our list. What could we pull? And then how many outcomes there are, we count the number. All right. What are the favorable outcomes of choosing a yellow? Well, we could pull this yellow. We could pull this yellow. Or we could pull this yellow. So all 3 of those yellows are an option for pulling a yellow marble. So when we count how many ways can you pull a yellow, well, there are 3 ways to pull a yellow. Down here it asks us what are the favorable outcomes of not choosing blue. So again, I look which marble colors do I have the options of choosing if I'm not going to pull a blue. So the favorable outcomes are green, red, yellow, purple, yellow, yellow. Okay, so I list everything except for those blues. Again, remembering that this yellow is different from this yellow, which is different from this yellow. So again, when I count how many are not blue, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there are 6 ways to not choose blue. So we need to make sure that we remember what possible outcomes are, what favorable outcomes are, and then the big trick right now is knowing the difference between what are the favorable outcomes. So what are, so making that list, or how many ways. You'll be asked 2 different questions, and you need to make sure that you pay close attention to which question is being asked.